Welcome back to our module on stereotype threat and how it impacts computing education. In this segment, we're going to talk about one particular strategy for reducing the impact of stereotype threat in the lives of our students, which is to normalize academic struggle. This idea comes from a paper published by Cohen, Steele, and Ross called Critical Feedback Across the Racial Divide, although it's also been studied in a variety of other papers. And the idea here is that we need to provide criticism. We need to tell people what they did wrong. But we want to make sure we do this well. We don't want them to get discouraged. We want them to see it as an opportunity to grow, rather than as a reason to believe they are not going to succeed. So this study looks at three basic approaches. This positive buffer, you just simply say, you did well, and then provide a feedback about everything that people did wrong. High standards begins by saying, we expect a really lot. We have high standards. We expect a lot of you. And here are the things that you did not meet our high standards yet. And an assurance is the statement that we know that you can succeed. When you combine high standards and assurance, we call this wise feedback. That's the name the community has picked for this, right? This idea of, we have really high standards. We know you can succeed, but our standards are high, and here's how you're not yet meeting our standards. So, in this paper, they looked at a variety of ideas here about how this might work together. This one looked at race in particular as the stereotype under question. And they looked at motivation of students based on what kind of feedback they received. And they saw that providing either a positive buffer or this wise feedback could cause students to have much higher motivation. They wanted to succeed. They believed they could succeed. And this is actually something we notice in general. Stereotype threat does not always reduce motivation. In particular, if you don't believe the stereotype, it can even increase your motivation to succeed. But nonetheless, it can distract you from what you're doing. So we see either of these can boost the motivation significantly. When you ask the individuals how biased were the individuals who are measuring you, based on the criticism they had received, we'll see that providing the positive buffer reduces how much they sense the bias, how aware they are of a stereotype, and how much they're likely to ascribe you, as the individual measuring them, as being biased against them, but does not do so nearly as much as wise feedback, which can reduce it to a statistically insignificant level, right? Where people do not see themselves as being biased against in any meaningful way, when you can give them this wise feedback. So there's a difference in motivation, there's a difference in this perceived bias, and there's also a difference in the identity students feel, how well they identify with the space, right? So if we just give them criticism, we see that their overall level of identity, no matter who they are, right? None of these have a racially statistically significant difference. But this unbuffered criticism, or this positive buffered criticism, has a lower level of identity in the field, particularly for black students as well as for whites, than if you can give them this wise feedback, right? When you tell them that you have high standards and that you believe they can succeed, they feel like they belong, they feel part of the field, and this increases their desire and ability to remain part of what's going on.